Welcome to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. Your host, a behavioral scientist and bachelor, talks to leading experts and successful singles about living solo and living well. Travel more, make things, sleep in when you want to. Here's the playbook for the person who is unapologetically unattached. Now, please welcome Dr. Peter McGraw.
This episode is an impromptu primer on ethical non-monogamy. You'll learn what ethical non-monogamy is, and my guest and I discuss the principles of ethical non-monogamy. There's some bonus material if you want to stick around at the end, where we talk about online dating for the ethical non-monogamist. Let's get started. Welcome to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. I'm Peter McGraw. Today's guest is Jillian North. Jillian is an award-winning salesperson, world traveler, writer, and painter. Welcome, Jillian.
Thank you, Peter.
This is an unusual podcast. This is an impromptu one. So we did not plan to have this podcast. We had dinner and got talking about this project, and I sprung this idea. And actually, the reason we're going to have this is going to be a little shorter than the typical podcast, at least maybe, who knows where this will go, is that in a conversation or in a text message with me, she used this term, ethical non-monogamy. And admittedly, that's only the second time I've come across this term, which I'm surprised by. Other time I came across it was on a dating app. A woman who said, "Hey, for you ethical non-monogamous guys, stay away."
Sounds like a calling card, though.
And so I was like, this is exactly the kind of thing that we want to talk about on the podcast. And so I asked if she wanted to do it, and she yes-anded and said, yeah, let's do it. So what the hell is ethical non-monogamy?
In my opinion, ethical non-monogamy is only available to people who truly understand and take seriously the significance of human relationships.
Okay.
So there can't be a motivation of personal gain or conquest necessarily. I believe it has to be with the objective of sharing new experiences with quality humans.
Okay. Wait, let's back up for a second.
Okay.
All right. So I know what non-monogamy is.
Okay.
Right. So that's having multiple partners, sexual typically, but I mean, I guess you could have non-monogamy and other.
It can be emotional
and so on, right? But in generally, it's physical, intimate relationships. So you have more than one partner, overlapping,
often,
right? And so, okay, and so typically people think of non-monogamy as a bad thing, in part because the default, the norm, is monogamy, and oftentimes non-monogamy is accompanied by deceit, lying, infidelity, cheating, whatever word you want to use with it. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming then the notion of ethical non-monogamy doesn't involve cheating, deceit, lying, infidelity.
It does not. But also, I do not think of ethical non-monogamy as polyamory either.
Yeah, I think that's right. So my understanding of what polyamory is that it's having multiple loving relationships.
Which love is present often in ethical non-monogamy, okay, but not in love.
Okay.
Okay. I have a lot of affection for my non-monogamous partners. Some of them who I have been in love with perhaps in the past, but a lot of them I have genuine affection and even love for.
I see. So the notion of intimacy and love are independent.
Yes.
In ethical non-monogamy. Mm-hmm. Okay.
You do not have to be in love with each other, but I believe to really be in that frame, you do have to have sincere concern and care for the other person.
Okay. Yeah. I think, I mean, this is, it's about treating people with respect and so on.
And kindness.
Compassion, and so on. Okay. So the notion of ethical non-monogamy is, it sounds like for you, you're talking about having, respect for, caring for your other partners that are there. But how does How does one become an ethical non-monogamist?
I think probably it starts with years of therapy. I don't think you're doing a service to yourself or other partners or potential partners if you are not doing the work to be very self-aware and identifying your blind spots. Because if you're not working to metabolize your wounds, you're going to wind up working them out on other people. And that's when I think the ethicality of it can be challenged.
Okay. Tell me more about that. So the ideal ethical non-monogamist understands who they are, understands their strengths and weaknesses, and is not using those relationships to fix what's wrong with them.
Right. Or get back at, or have some
escape.
Yeah. I think truly maybe any other agenda than pure enjoyment of the other person and and sharing the company of the other person.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like, okay, so to me, it's such an interesting idea that, right? So by the way, there's no such thing as ethical monogamy. As an aside,
I guess that's true,
right? Like, so the idea that, like, the way this really fits, as I see it, given it 20 minutes of thought, is so there's a world of monogamy out there, and everybody's familiar with that. That's the norm. That's the standard. That's what you learn in Sunday school. It's the default, etc. Yeah, it's status quo. And that's what most people strive to do. Now, we know that it's striving because we know what divorce rates are. We know what infidelity rates are. We know the rates of, as an aside, I was just having a conversation with someone who was talking about 23andMe. There are now thousands, hundreds of thousands of children who have now realized that their father is not their father. As a result of these DNA tests, 23andMe, and there's a bunch of them, kind of a thing. This is a very common thing. And the reason is it's very common for kids to have a different biological dad than the one who raises them. I don't know what the rate is, but it's like single digits percentage wise.
Without their knowledge.
That's right. And researchers have had to deal with this when they do like parent-children studies. They don't take self-reports of parents. They do blood tests now because mom,
that doesn't lie.
Because mom's like, yeah, he's the dad. and he's not the dad. So any case, the point is monogamy is the status quo. It's the default. It's challenging. We know it's challenging for people to do.
Would you say it's unnatural?
I don't know if I have the expertise to make that judgment. And the reason why I don't know if it's natural, part of it is I don't know what natural and unnatural means, in a sense that what I do know is we have biological drives, and I don't think that those biological drives make us naturally monogamous in the way that like some penguins are, right?
Yes.
But I also know the power of culture and context and norms that can make it harder or easier to be that way. And so it's just nature and nurture is just so hard to pull apart. I would say this, it's harder to be monogamous today than it was 70 years ago.
Because of the paradox of choice, right?
I think it's not only that, our communities are bigger and our ability to be anonymous. I think that the nature of temptation is greater, that in a world where, look, when I don't date online a lot, but when I do, I'm surprised by the number of women who say, "Are you married?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not married. I'm on a dating app."
Oh, don't say it like that, because many, many men who are married are on dating apps.
That's exactly right. So of course that makes sense now that I know that.
Yes.
I find that quite surprising.
They're just fishing. They're fishing for validation. They want to make sure they still have it.
It seems so risky.
But they don't show up for the date. They block your number. They delete the match. Like, they will go along with the game.
Is that right?
Yes. And
it's a validation thing. Well, some of them are truly doing more than just fishing.
It's also a dopamine hit.
Yeah. So in any case, the notion of, and also, norms are shifting and they're shifting fast. Like the idea of open relationships, you mentioned polyamory before. Like suddenly you have more options, you have more choice. I mean, the reason that solo launched is because more and more people are staying single longer and staying single forever. And so, or some version of single. I mean, what I mean is not being married.
Okay.
And so opportunity is greater, temptation is greater, and so on. And so then, what's interesting is we're moving from a world where you have monogamy is good, non-monogamy is bad, and to this idea that certain types of non-monogamy are bad and certain types of monogamy are good. Excuse me. Certain types of non-monogamy are bad and certain types of non-monogamy are good. And the idea, I think, of putting a label of ethical non-monogamy is to say, hey, guys, here's the good version. And my sense of it, and I want you to talk more about it, is what it's designed to do foundationally, as another digression. There's lots of theories about morality. Lots of people have done work on what makes something immoral versus wrong, right? There's some things that people say are wrong, right? And then things that are immoral. Okay. No matter what the theory is, it comes down to one of the foundational ideas is harm. So immoral things cause harm to other people. Some theories say it's all harm. It all can be winnowed down to harm. Others say it's harm and it's fairness and it's authority and it's all these, kind of moral underpinnings that when you violate them are threatening to the fabric of culture and society and so on. I happen to be more of a harm is the big one. Harm's the big one. And so it seems to me that the principles of ethical non-monogamy are designed to avoid harm.
I think they are negotiable among each partner and they should be negotiated. So I am a big believer in being decisive about it, choosing this arrangement for whatever that is, and defining the arrangement.
Okay, so this is all very abstract.
Okay.
So so we have listeners who probably have most of their experience, most of the time, most of their life has been in some monogamy, serial monogamist kind of thing, just given so suppose they're contemplating this ethical they're going to do the good non-monogamy. They're not going to do the bad non-monogamy. They should go to a different podcast if they want to do that. What are they doing? What should they be thinking about? What is the range of, let's talk details.
Okay. So my first experience with ethical non-monogamy, and really what teed up the conversation, was I was 19 years old. I was 19 years old and I was at college, and I had become flirty friends with one of the big deal athletes on campus.
Okay.
And he and I had spent some time together and we had some chemistry, and I was reticent to get sexual with him, knowing his reputation, and he was a big deal athlete.
Big man on campus.
Yeah. And I knew I was going to be one in the rotation, essentially. Or I should say, I assumed I would be one in the rotation.
Okay.
And we had a conversation. It was certainly progressing towards sex, our relationship. And I said, hey, I don't know. I don't just want to be a notch in your belt. And he said, listen, I really like you. Yes, I see other people. I would like you to be one of those people I see. And
you're like, he's like, you could be one of 6 notches in my belt.
Yeah, sure. But the fact of the matter was, I thought he was so respectful because he was giving me the choice.
Yeah, I see. He didn't say, no, honey, you're going to be, it's just going to be you. Right. And so.
And conversely, I had a relationship a few years ago with someone that got very serious very fast. It was 8 or 9 weeks of incredible intensity. And then he disappeared sort of for 8 to 10 days. And the things he was doing weren't calculating correctly. They weren't adding up. And so I put him on the spot and I said, "Are you married?"
I see.
And he said, "If I tell you, you're going to break up with me." I said, "No, I'm going to break up with you for the 4 kids that you also have."
Right. Yeah. You're like, "I'm not breaking up with you because you're married. I'm breaking up because you lied to me."
Because you lied to me. And I said to him, and because he goes on to this day about how special our connection was. And I said, "No," I said, "that was fake because you took away my choice."
I see.
I said, "Now we had incredible chemistry, so I'm not going to say that I wouldn't necessarily have progressed with that decision, but you took away my choice."
Yes.
And so therefore that will never be special to me because you lied to me and you stole from me.
Yeah, I see.
And so those are really...
Yeah, they're good, nice contrast. You know, the irony, of course, is that on one hand, it's a 21-year-old man who's acting ethically, and the other one, it's
a 40-year-old man.
40-year-old man who's not. Yeah, that's interesting. You know, I had an experience recently, a first date with a woman who told me a story about her being in her, I think, early 20s, connected with an older gentleman on an app. They go out on a first date. 10 minutes into the first date, he says, "Listen, I'm married. I'm looking for an arrangement. Right? And so I'll pay you $5,000 a month. We'll do 5 or more dates a month. I'll tell you how to dress and how to do your hair. And, you know, we'll go out in public, everything. My wife knows about it. She approves of it. It's okay." I was like, "Really?"
At 25, that's so sexy.
And I said to her, I said, "Did you do it?" And she said, "Oh yeah, I definitely did it." And, I said, "How long did you do it?" She said, "About a year." I said, you made $60K doing this." She's like, "Yeah." She's like, "I got to know the wife. She was fine with it all." I said, "Why did it stop?" She said, "They got pregnant." And then she said, "We're still friends today." It's not sexual or anything, but, you know, kind of thing. And, you know, to me, like I've told that story to people and it's so fascinating, the response that I get. Really? Which is some people are just like, "Ew, that's gross." And then other people are like yours, like, "Oh yeah, I can see, you know, totally. I can see that." I mean,
full disclosure, when I was in my 20s, I probably have had most experiences you could imagine between consenting adults. And that was on the table. And it was certainly a very appealing suggestion sometimes. Now, the challenge that I had having lived in the South at that time was there was not a wife who was knowledgeable and encouraging.
Well, to me, that's the thing is, so when people have that negative reaction, I say, look, I can understand why you wouldn't want to do this. Of course, like this is not for everyone. However, these are 3 adults. It is as honest and transparent a situation as you're going to find. And like, is anyone being harmed? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so if you go back to the morality idea, yes. So if your view of morality is purity, and then if purity is 2 loving people getting in front of, you know, the government and God and proclaiming their allegiance to each other forever, then of course this is immoral because it violates some pure sanctity of relationships. But if you don't subscribe to that per se, then it's hard to make an argument about. I mean, I guess someone could say, well, she doesn't. You could push this. You know what I mean? About does she really have consent? She needs the money, etc. These kinds of things. But in her case, it wasn't. It's not like she was facing homelessness and so on. But it's honestly, it's just an interesting experience. And if you do things, as I found myself certainly in my 20s and still sometimes now, doing things for the story of it, that's a really good story. Yeah. And she decided to tell me the first time we went out. Because she's not ashamed of it. Not. That's exactly right. And I think
when you have choice and it's consenting adults, there is no room for shame. And that's one of the most important parts of ethical non-monogamy. And I do find that in my experiences, ethical non-monogamy often comes about because there is some sort of underlying sexual shame that they need to explore and feel not judged with someone where the stakes are not so high. Are you familiar with sexual surrogacy?
I've heard this term, but no.
Okay. So, there's research.
I've heard about, you can hire someone to, cuddle with.
Sort of, but this is all the way there.
I met a woman who that was her job.
Wow.
She's a professional cuddler. And so she gets hired by people to lay in bed and cuddle kind of thing.
I have a hygiene issue with that. Because you can't select.
I asked her, I said, are there boners involved in this? She goes, sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit like the world of dominatrix, which technically does not involve sex.
Yes, I see. Right.
So, but to that same token.
Sexual surrogate. So it's a professional cuddler plus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
How's that different than being a sex worker?
No, I think you are still to some degree a sex worker.
It's a particular type
It is a particular type of sex work that is often referred to the individual by a therapist.
I have heard about this.
Okay. There was a really famous film that came out a few years ago. I should say really famous. In the sex work world, it's really famous. Helen Hunt starred in the film as this woman. Her last name escapes me. Her name is Cheryl. And she wrote a book. I read the memoir as well after I saw the movie. The movie is called The Sessions.
Okay.
And
I'll put it in the exhibits.
It's with a gentleman, Mark, again, also his last name escapes me. And he is basically in an iron lung. And his therapist referred her to him so that he could have a sexual experience and feel comfortable. And so very often I think sexual surrogacy is primarily for men, and obviously it's not very well known.
No.
But this has been some of the work that I've done over the years is people who find me from different ways who are struggling with things like maybe erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation or a lot of self-confidence issues. Mm-hmm. They want to work that out with someone. And this is kind of where ethical non-monogamy also plays a big role. If you look at it like the spokes of a wheel.
And you're
it's a confined number of visits.
I see.
With the surrogate.
It's like a punch card.
Mm-hmm, it is. Yes. Did you accomplish everything you set out to do today? Yeah, but I think the film was very educational.
I see. I haven't seen
to that degree. Okay. And the potential of becoming a sex therapist is very interesting to me. And it's the same reason I like to start relationships in the deep end. Also why I like to write memoir, because you come into a room in a workshop with 10 other writers and you start in the deep end.
I see.
And so I think the way someone handles themselves sexually tells you so much about them. And for lack of a better word, I don't like this word, but their damage. Okay. Where their wounds are, where their challenges are, what landmines you're going to step on potentially interacting with them on a very intimate level. And that's why.
No, when I'm gonna sneeze, you keep talking.
Sorry.
You should keep talking so that people are like, why are they not talking?
Because he's sneezing. But that's also why the idea of not just a dating app, but some of the sexual solicitation websites are interesting to me, because you start in the deep end. And for a lot of people, when you start with what you're ashamed of or what you're challenged by in relationships, like my kink is X or my fear is this, you start from an honest place.
I see. And you say these, would you call them sexual websites?
Like sexual solicitation websites, sort of. Right. You think of like Swing Lifestyle or Adult Friend Finder or something like that.
Wait, I thought Adult Friend Finder was all, oh no, that was Ashley Madison. That was all fake.
Married people.
It was all fake. It was all just populated with married guys.
No, it's a married website.
What do you
Ashley
mean?
Madison is a website for married people seeking covert partnerships.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yes.
But I think it was just filled with dudes.
Well, I mean,
any case, because there was like a leak of all the names
of all the email addresses, and you could go in there, and I had fun with that.
That's amazing.
Yes, you could find out if people had ever registered, ever created a profile on Ashley Madison.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to put that in the exhibits about where to find it. I'm sure people could find it if they want to find it. They want to look.
No, but my point about that is if you're really shopping for ethical non-monogamy, I recommend starting in the deep end because ethical non-monogamy cannot exist without honesty.
Okay, so hold on. I want to push back on this idea for a second because it sounds like you're giving advice for people like you. And so first of all, I have a question here that I wrote down, which is like, what are the 3 things you need to know? Like, suppose you're someone contemplating ethical non-monogamy. This is a new thing. What are the 3 things you know? I already answered the first question or the first one, which was honesty.
Yeah, but I think we need to even break that down further.
Okay, that's good. So what does that mean then?
Well, let's list all 3. Okay.
Okay. What are the 3 things?
Let's say honesty.
Okay.
Consideration, and maybe consideration and respect go together.
So you mean consideration like compassion, respect, etc.
Not only that, but consideration for the quote lifestyle you're trying to maintain together. We spoke earlier at dinner about schedules.
Yes.
Okay. Just things like that.
Okay.
So not just consideration of their feelings, which is important, but I think that also goes along with respect.
Okay.
Very often.
So in terms of considering whether they would be a good partner or not.
Yeah.
Okay. So, right. Yeah. I mean, that it's interesting because this is always the problem with podcasts is you have a bunch of chit chat that happens before the podcast. And I always want to be like, shh, stop,
bottle this.
Stop talking.
We speak later.
But one of those things, let's talk about honesty for a moment in the broadest sense.
Okay.
I think a lot of people struggle with honesty in any relationship, especially with one like this, right?
Well, this is so unconventional.
Yeah. So what happens is, I think a lot of times people are dishonest in relationships, not because they're a bad person, but because they want something and they're fearful that they're not going to get it because because they tell the person exactly what they want. Right. And so what happens is you're excited about someone. You want to see them again, but you're afraid that if you tell them
that they're part of the rotation,
that you like to use sex toys, that you only want to go out twice a week, that you don't want to have children, that you're moving away in a few months, that, the list is endless, right?
Yes.
Like the list is endless. That if you don't tell them that, you don't lie to them and tell them the opposite. You just don't tell them that thing because you want them to stick around. Let's be honest. They may stick around, but in the long run, it's a bad strategy.
It's not a respect or a consideration.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
So you really, I think even more, I would like to have 5 things, first of all, not 3. But even more, you should not go forward if you cannot identify what this would look like for you. I often tell people on dating apps specifically, what are you looking for? And when they can't tell me what they want, I say, if you can't articulate it, you won't know when it shows up and you won't be able to identify it when it's in front of you.
I see. Okay.
So I think it's very important that you go in with an intention in mind because that allows you to have consideration right off the bat.
All right. So I'm still struggling with the term consideration.
Okay.
So
this goes back, I think, to your point about I'm moving away or I only want to see you a couple times a week. Like these negotiations, I think, need to happen in a low pressure environment prior to the stakes being high, prior to sleeping together the first time, prior to falling in love. Like they need to understand that that's not available.
I see.
To them. And that's not what we're shopping for.
Okay. So this is, I see this as an extension of honesty, but maybe not. Okay. All right. So what are some of the other ones?
I think having a bottom line is really important.
Okay.
Because
what does that mean?
Can I reference things we spoke about before?
I don't know.
Okay, so for me, one of them is the means and flexibility to travel.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
So
some people would call them deal breakers.
Yeah.
Bottom line sounds less.
Again, it depends on what you're shopping for. Okay.
Tell me
so if I'm just shopping for a fun experience for the weekend.
Yes.
You can not have a passport and be young and potentially not contribute to my existence in any other way besides the story and an evening of pleasure. However, when I'm considering a real ethical non-monogamous partnership, most of mine last years and years and years, and they may have years gaps in them. But I found that consistently we always have sincere affection for each other. Like that should go on the list of not just lust, but genuine affection.
Yeah, it's interesting you say this because I use the term conversation.
Okay.
Like I'm not interested in dating someone who I'm just purely physically attracted to.
It's of no interest to me as well.
It's of zero. I mean, as a younger man, sure, but now, like, no.
My time is too precious.
We need to talk. There's talking.
Sapiosexual. My brain needs to get turned on by the possibility of having sex with you. And if you are stupid or uninteresting, boner killer.
So affection can take different forms, but some of it is, I get this idea of affection is you like the person.
And you admire them.
Yes, I see. Right.
And not just in a, oh, you're so big and powerful kind of way.
But to me, affection doesn't necessarily fit. It just fits with your form of ethical non-monogamy. Well,
a man is going to get disinterested if he does not have affection for you.
Now, that may be true, but suppose a couple goes to a swingers club and they decide to swap partners for the night.
Their first time at a club?
What's that?
Is it their first time?
I don't know. We can make up the rules of this anyway, but like
we can talk about that.
But you know what I mean. So it's just a purely sexual experience and so on. It doesn't seem like affection matters that much in that particular form of ethical non-monogamy.
Well, now you're breaking down forms of ethical non-monogamy.
Okay, that's fine, but But if there are forms where affection is less prominent,
well. Affection they'd still have to want the other person.
That's fair.
They'd still have to lust after the other person or be attracted to them. It's like they say, when you go to a nudist colony, nobody you actually want to see naked is at the nudist colony.
Yeah, of course.
So you have to genuinely be attracted to someone, not just the novelty
all right.
of that.
That's fair.
And I think, are we exploring this as a partnership or just as a subject?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm asking you the questions. I don't know.
Because I have so much to say about this subject.
Look, I mean, these are, I think for the average person listening, these are wildly new ideas.
Okay.
Like they might have come across something or heard something or whatever. So even just getting even just exposing people to the idea that there's a world of people out there who don't live a traditional monogamous existence where they have multiple partners, sometimes over years, sometimes with year gaps, and so on, where the critical element is that if you are intimate with someone, they don't mistakenly believe that they're the only one.
Okay.
Right. I mean, that to me is what it fundamentally comes down to. And that as a result, they have a choice to say, I don't want to do that, or I would like to do that.
I mean, I think there are some fundamental considerations, right? Okay. Always being safe.
Okay.
All right.
Makes good sense.
Always.
You're already on number 5. Are we going to these things?
Well, we can
practice.
We can package maybe respect and consideration together.
Okay.
I think honesty has its own tier.
Yes. Bottom line, having some standards.
Okay, so let's say standards. So we can put safe sex under standards.
It's fine. It's arbitrary. It doesn't have to get to
That's fine.
5 or 3 or 6 or 10. Right. So obviously safety seems to be a clear. So
it is clear, but people don't do that.
Well, one of the advantages of monogamy is the safety, right? Like, I mean, people put it forth as like a big feature, a benefit.
Mostly men, but yes.
But you know what I mean? But nonetheless, like, like the idea that, that monogamy creates safety in a sense, right? In that case.
Well, and I've gone through periods of decided sexual monogamy with someone where we're not emotionally monogamous because when I think of monogamy, I want I would want my partner to be able to open my phone at any time. Not that they would or should, but that there would be nothing that would give them pause.
I see.
No conversations, no flirting, nothing like that. Okay. So,
or they know that there's flirting and that
in the ethical non-monogamy space of it, then yeah, anything is game. But I've gone through periods of straight sexual monogamy, but not emotional monogamy. And at that point, that's whenever you share tests, I think, and you define, hey, I'm not really up for this anymore. And we wrap it back up again.
Okay. And you say wrap it up, you mean wear a condom? Wear a
condom.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. All right. What else? I said this was going to be short, but it's not short.
I mean,
of course it's not short. It's such a
it's a huge subject.
This is the thing. It's like monogamy is simple, but difficult.
Yeah.
Non-monogamy is complex and difficult, right? That's the difference.
And I think all of these things, no matter however many there are, everybody is different. Some people only want it for one night, in which case maybe consideration and respect is not as important because you're not seeing those people time and again.
Yes, I see.
Okay. Right. So safety is important. And that I think falls under consideration as well. And honesty may or may not be that important if the goal is only one night and not to see that person again.
Yeah, this is an interesting thing. I've heard people talk about sleeping with married people, with a married person. And there are, I've noticed two schools of thought. So the first one is along the lines of the story I told earlier, which is your partner's partner, wife or husband, knows about that they're not monogamous. And the other one is, that's not my problem.
There's a lot of head in the sand.
There's a lot of people who are just like, it's up to them. Like, I'm not going to decide yes or no based upon what their partner knows or doesn't know. It's not my business. And I always sort of say, it's like, I think that's just a convenient sense of it all, but I'd be curious to know what the counterpoint is to that.
So I think I've had every variety in that spectrum because I think there are multiple tiers in that spectrum as well. And that being, maybe I have a partner and he's been married for 30 years. He's in his late 50s and they have, as he would say, one of the most loving and kind relationships, but there's been no sex for 27 years. And he's had a couple of relationships in that time. He and I have been friends and sometimes more than that over 12 years. And, but we talk about everything. And I always ask him like, how is she? And he's like, oh, she's good. Or her parents are this. And the only challenge I have with that is she's not aware. But so he had a very serious relationship for 4 years in the 12 years that I've known him. And in that relationship, and we actually spoke about it when he came to visit a few months ago, what happened with that relationship is I guess he got to a resentful place. Like he really would like to be having sex with his wife. He really would. And because that's not even an option for them, he dated this woman and he was very flagrant about it. He took her to their restaurants and in their neighborhood, and they actually live maybe a couple blocks away from each other.
I see.
And they shared their friend group, and his wife came to him and said, listen, you do what you want to do, but don't embarrass me.
I see.
And this goes back, I think, to the respect and consideration.
Right.
Is even if he's not choosing to be with his wife sexually, he has a guest house and he lives in the guest house and she lives in the main house, and I've been there. And it's more of, that was her thing, it's like, don't be disrespectful. And I think even in politics and public, I think that's sort of the Bill Clinton thing.
Well, you know what? Yeah, look, I think that, this notion of, what we're talking about, there's a long history of this, and again, as I was talking about earlier, cultural, there's a lot of wiggle room within culture, depending on the culture, where these kinds of arrangements are very typical. And as long as they're executed
respectfully
in a way that is, that follows the rules, then people
And I think the most important thing, especially for your listeners, is that those rules are flexible and they are based on the couple in front of you.
Indeed.
So, I don't typically believe in anything where all adults are not consensual. So he was maybe grandfathered in, if you will, 12, 13 years ago, where we developed a friendship, and maybe once a year or something, we would see each other. We go through a period of 3 months and then maybe not for a year. We went 7 years of not seeing each other, but speaking once a quarter, once every 6 months. And I go to him for financial advice. He runs a company. We talk about that a lot. We have a very respectful, loving, considerate, affectionate relationship.
I see.
And he's an incredible gentleman. So his manners are impeccable. And that's a big turn on.
Yeah. That seems to be, according to the apps, that seems like a lost art.
Manners? I mean, that's a panty dropper.
There's like a lot of people.
You open the door. You just, yes.
As an aside, I will tell you this. I think as a man, it's difficult to know the rules because some women want it and some women don't. And so it's hard to know.
Back to a question we had off camera, if you will. Do you want the ones who don't appreciate that if that's something that you bring to a partnership?
Yeah. I mean, I think, to me, I don't know, some of these kinds of things are, it's like,
not that important.
It's not that important. Like, okay. It's not a foundational element. Like, to me, I believe in politeness. And so then to me, politeness might be opening a door and politeness might be not opening a door. It's just figuring out whether the door should be opened or not opened.
Okay. Let's take that further, because I don't think politeness is a turn on. Okay. I think thoughtfulness is a turn on. Okay. So what that means is when you have these kind of partnerships, the most important thing is to make people, Dale Carnegie, feel important.
Mm-hmm.
And so there needs to be a specialness. I can't just be one of the rotation. I like this kind of wine. I have this allergy. Mm-hmm. When I show up at your house, this wine is there. We have this plan. Like, that is so attractive.
Yeah,
because
sure.
and the other thing is it's sustainable in a bubble of ethical non-monogamy. And I think that's one of the challenges with monogamy is there's no novelty anymore.
Yeah. I mean, look, we could go on at length about the challenges with monogamy. Like,
Fair.
the easiest argument, I think, is it makes people lazy.
I would absolutely agree with that. And that's where ethical non-monogamy, I think,
you can't
supersedes
be lazy.
that. Yes.
I see what you mean.
And that's the attractiveness, because there's effort.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's effort, you feel important. If you feel important, you feel engaged. If you're engaged, you're willing to continue.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Do you have any others you want to add to this?
Burgeoning list.
Yes.
Let's see. Sorry. Okay. So what do we have? We have honesty. We have consideration.
Yeah. We have some standards or bottom line, affection, safe sex, safety.
Yeah. And I think consideration, safety, these things can go in there.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you want, I could run a cluster analysis or a factors analysis on these things and see where they load.
Well, are you asking me what's important to me in an opportunity, or are you asking me what's important potentially to your list or to a generic individual who's not familiar with ethical non-monogamy?
Yeah, I'm thinking of this as a little bit of a primer around this idea. And so what are the kinds of things that as people, here's the challenge of this. A lot of people don't know anyone who's behaving like this. So they don't have
that they know of.
That they know of. Okay, that's fair.
Because I keep finding friends who I think are super square, and then I find out they have an open marriage.
That's fine. But whether you don't know or they don't exist is the same thing.
Okay.
Right? That is, they don't have a role model. Right? They don't have someone that they can ask about. They don't have, you know what I mean? And so you get to be that person. And so, as a veteran.
Okay. But okay. Here's the thing. You are also a veteran. So I feel like you can contribute to this from a male perspective as well.
Yeah. So clearly I haven't thought about this as much as you have. Like, so to me, I'm locked on honesty as a sort of foundational principle.
Which does not mean over disclosure.
Yeah. Look, I understand that there's a level of discretion that is important. Like, I believe that there's a level of discretion when it comes to intimate relationships that should be foundational. That is that the better the more discreet you are and the more discreet your partner knows you are, the better your relationship's going to be, because they're not afraid that.
Well, I also act under the assumption that unless we have had a defined conversation about the potential or decision of monogamy, assume everyone is not monogamous.
That seems like a fair assumption.
Yeah, but it's not as common as you would think.
I see. Yeah. Yeah, it seems to me that there's like, they call it the DTR for a reason, right? Define the relationship. And so, now I think that's one of those things where, people get scared, right? Because they're not being monogamous. They want to keep seeing this person. The other person's hoping they're monogamous. And then at some point they go, so, right? It always starts with so. What's going on here? What are we doing? Right?
Where is this going?
Yeah, that's right.
But I think that the monogamy conversation should happen so far in advance, because I've had many people get their feelings hurt when we're dating. For example, they come out with the I love you stuff 2 months in. And you're like, whoa, we're still using condoms. Roll it back.
So you can't fall in love with someone while wearing a condom? You
can, but you should also expect that they are also sharing space and fluids with other people.
Okay.
So maybe protect yourself emotionally a little bit more.
So for the male listeners, no I love yous.
If you are still using a condom, do not tell her that you love her. She may dump you.
I'm definitely making a note of this. Unlike my other podcast, I'm going to do like a little teaser at the beginning where I'm like, one of those things is going to be, it'll be something about saying I love you while wearing a condom. That gets someone listening to this. Get someone listening 48 minutes in.
Oh, are we? How long is the podcast supposed to be?
It's usually 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay. So you have stuff to edit. It's fine.
We're good. Okay. So I do want to wrap this up. No pun intended. But what are some like sort of closing thoughts that you have? I mean, look, I think here's the thing. I think 5 years from now, this is part of the regular vernacular.
I think it's further than that.
I'm not so sure. I mean,
depends on where you live.
Good point.
Okay. Metropolitan areas?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, that's fair. Topeka, Kansas? No. I get it.
No. Knoxville, Tennessee? No.
Fair enough. That's fair enough.
Doesn't say the desire's not there. Just saying maybe the availability is not there.
No, look, I mean, one thing that is very clear is that the more you tell people they can't do something, the more they want to do it, right? Like there's all this stuff about like where like about like the pornography consumption tendencies.
Utah?
Of red versus blue states.
Yes.
I mean,
Bible Belt.
Right.
One of my biggest clients is the largest adult toy store in the country, and some of their highest grossing sales stores are in the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
No question. To wrap this up.
Okay.
I think breaking down our entire list of primary considerations, I think true ethical non-monogamy does require courage. And most importantly, you have to trust the person you're with to not reject you for being honest.
I need to jump in here because they won't be overlapping, but I just did a podcast for I'm Not Joking, and this topic came up. The idea that, so I would call it vulnerability, and my guest, Kim Tarabiel, said, vulnerability is the bravest thing you can do. And I will tell you this, this is something men really struggle with, right? Like, so you say, oh, who's the braver sex? You think, you're like, oh, well, guys like they, like firefighters and,
warriors.
Go to war, warriors and all this kind of stuff. The ladies are pretty damn brave because they're better at being vulnerable than guys. And I think guys miss out on a whole half of masculinity and living better because they're not willing to be vulnerable by asking for what they need, by telling the world that they're scared, by...
That's the biggest one. Saying that I'm scared.
Yes.
Or that I'm not enough. I mean, isn't this why Brene Brown is now a multimillionaire? Because she will say that stuff to people and remind you that we're not alone, but we're not telling our stories. It was very important to me several years ago to come out as bisexual because Dan Savage, one of my favorite writers and podcasters, said people, and just like the Me Too movement and just like abortion now, is you love someone who is of this category. And by us not coming out and talking about that, we're not allowing them to know that they love someone in this category.
Yeah.
And so it's not about me being in the closet or not being in the closet. It's that my hyper Irish religious family needs to know that they have a queer person in their family that they already love and care about and trust with their children and things like that, so that they expand their world.
I see. Yeah.
And I think this goes in the same direction.
Yeah. I mean, certainly that's one of the ultimate forms of bravery, is to
be yourself with no security net. Nobody's going to sit there and go, we're going to love you unconditionally. My family is a very conditionally loving family.
Most families are.
Despite what they believe themselves to be.
Yeah, I love how many parents are just like, I just want my kids to be happy, but they should be accountants.
And also love Jesus. And also get married.
So I like that idea is that you have to embrace the brave, courageous side of yourself and be willing to be rejected.
Exactly. That's what that looks like. What that looks like is what we talked about earlier. Again, I'm not going to sign up for that. I appreciate that. Just like the gentleman who said to me, I would still like to hang out with you. Just know you're not the only one I'm hanging out with. He gave me the choice, and
he exposed himself.
Yes. To potentially, I would not hook up with him.
Yes.
Because I go, I'm not going to sign up for that.
Right.
Okay. But I'm not that kind of person. Actually, we never actually did have sex, but we did share company several times, and it changed my life, truly.
Yeah, I see.
That at such a young age, I was given the freedom of choice and also complete honesty, that I have repeated that because it felt so good and validating to me.
Yeah, honesty goes a long way. So I on a first date, typically first date, say I don't want to get married and have kids. And, for some people, they're just like, okay, check, please,
Well, that's why we covered it in our phone conversation.
So then other people are just like, oh, that's a little presumptuous. You know what I mean? And then other people are like, okay. And some people are like, oh, I want that, but I'm having a nice time. Like, it's interesting. We have there's a tendency, even when you think through the possibilities, is to think about the possibilities as being way more limited than they actually are in life. Anytime I plan for something, I'm often surprised as like, oh, I didn't plan for that. Right. There's so much uncertainty in the world. But nonetheless, that comes from like, if you're going to build any sort of foundation also, so it's not even just it's right and it's fair, but it's also a foundational thing, which is just like, it's so refreshing when you're with someone, you go, well, they may not always say something I like, but I know that they're going to be honest. And
there's freedom in that.
I think it's,
and for me, I can say that these relationships last in such an affectionate and loving, kind place because we started in the deep end, and I get to have conversations with those individuals because I respect them so much. Very deep personal thing. Like even like I was speaking about this gentleman, him talking to me when he broke up with that woman, she wanted him to leave his wife, and their heartbreak for each other. He's like, I'm never doing that because that's just not part of the deal. And so she had moved to London to get over him, and he was wrecked. I mean, I sent him like Adele CDs and talked on the phone because I'm still his friend.
Yeah, I see.
And more importantly, it doesn't threaten or discount the connection that we have.
I see. Yeah.
And that's one of the hardest things is, I wrote about having affairs and things like that, about not being the chosen one, like good enough to sleep with, but not good enough to be with. And ethical non-monogamy takes away that tension.
Because the person doesn't have to be everything.
It doesn't have to be everything. And they can exist for a specific purpose for a specific period of time if you both sign up for that.
I see you go. I knew this would be fascinating. I feel like I've learned so much from this conversation. Well, I thank you for your honesty.
Thank you for having me.
Has made this a worthwhile conversation.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, now we're going to turn to what would normally be the bonus material for people who sign up for the community, but I'm adding it here. Get ready to hear us talk about online dating for the ethical non-monogamist. Let's go. Okay, we're back for a little bonus recording. And the topic of this one, I'm very excited about this, is how to create an online dating profile as an ethical non-monogamist.
Yes.
So, phrased a different way.
How to get what you want when you're shopping online.
I do that. Yeah. How to meet other ethical non-monogamists, how to avoid the monogamists.
Well, and to be fair, not all the people that you meet have to be ethical non-monogamists, because not everyone that you're meeting is going to want to date other people necessarily.
Sure. Okay. That's fair. That's true. So that's right. Okay.
So I have had relationship with someone who I know never dated anybody else.
So they were monogamistic with you.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. That's a good point.
But we were all above board.
Yes.
The whole time. So I can definitely say what you should not do, and don't say things like, I don't know what I'm looking for, or I just want a good time, or I just want to have some fun.
I remember getting online. This is years ago when the stuff was just getting up, and a woman wrote, "I want to spice things up," and my buddy was like, "Dude, that is code." I'm like, "Really?" Okay, so
there is a lot of code in online dating.
Oh, okay. So
there's a lot of code.
What are some of the? Let's digress for a moment. What are some things that are code in online dating?
Code in online dating. I travel a lot.
Okay. All right.
Or I'm not in town very frequently.
And that's code for I'm married.
Potentially that I'm married. Definitely means I'm not available, and probably don't be offended if I don't speak to you for months at a time.
Okay.
Or certainly a month at a time.
I see.
So if you're looking for any kind of commitment, it's not just about scheduling. It's about emotional availability and bandwidth with that person.
Okay. I would think I travel a lot as just a way to it's like a braggy thing. Like, evidently everyone online loves to travel.
Which is why I asked those questions that I asked. When was your last trip? When is your next one? Where did you go? Don't say Cleveland. Yeah. So as far as travel goes, yes. It's really about the phrasing. So if we're going back to the code of it, it's I travel for work a lot, means they're just not really available during the week, and they're probably not going to be available for a relationship, a conventional relationship. And they don't want you to ask it of them. They're going to be annoyed at you for pulling on them.
They're getting ahead of this. They're getting ahead of this issue. Okay.
Yes. I just want to have a good time. Means they are just trying to hook up.
Yes.
No question. Oftentimes, the people who say they're looking for a relationship, I think that's a bait and switch.
Oh, okay.
I think they think they can attract a higher quality individual, but they still wind up doing the exact same behavior as if they had said, back to the whole, we don't do things ethically.
Yes.
I think men sometimes think, I might want to be in a partnership. And then they cycle through 17 people because they never really wanted that, or they wanted the variety. They just don't know how to ask for it.
Yeah. I think these things are probably difficult. Like, so if you're doing anything, again, non-traditional, or you're open to other possibilities besides marriage and a long-term relationship, it's not like the apps are really have this all figured out yet. Right. Like, so like they have these categories.
OkCupid is probably the best.
Okay. What are their categories?
You probably have 30 categories.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So they're ahead.
So sapiosexual, pansexual, non-monogamous, open relationship, polyamory.
And I assume you can check more than one box.
You can.
I see. Yeah. That seems more than just like marriage, relationship, something casual. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. But I think that's I don't know is that catch-all for a lot of these other things. Okay, so what else should you not do?
I actually think you should not define what you're looking for, personally.
Okay.
I think you should talk about what you bring to the table.
Okay.
So, I'm a really good cook.
Mm-hmm.
I am very close to my family. I laugh a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So back to that don't be negative thing.
We were talking earlier about people get beat down by being on the apps. I understand that. But the tendency is to try to head off things by saying, I don't want this. Don't do this.
Don't be that.
Don't be that. Don't be that. Don't be that. And it ends up unfortunately backfiring because if anything, it scares away the most appealing people, because the most appealing with the people are like, oh, I don't want to have someone that negative in my life.
I don't know the name of the study of this, but there was a political study that was done. I think it was like in the days, they studied like Grover Cleveland type of days. And they said something along the lines of that all the candidate did was just say, I'm not this, I don't do this, I don't do that. And they tested so negatively. And just to refute their opponent, and it tested so poorly that when they just focus on what they do well, they attract more people. So I think that's the mentality you want to go
more flies with honey. I think
more flies with honey, absolutely. Right. But I think that's most important, is making sure that you say what you're good at and what you bring to the table in a partnership. But again, I'm also a big believer in the phone call prior to the first date.
Yes.
I probably have 20 phone calls and meet 1 to 2 people in person.
Wow, that's quite a ratio.
Yes, I'll have 2 phone dates tonight. I'm in sales. Come on.
Are you after we finish up with this taping? Are you got a call scheduled?
No, I'm not actively soliciting right now.
Okay, so is there a way to create an online dating profile as an ethical non-monogamist that feels different?
Depends on the website. Okay. So I think OkCupid, which is not an advertisement for OkCupid, but OkCupid allows you the most
By the way, if
flexibility.
OkCupid wants to sponsor Solo, we'll talk.
They would be I think they would be really good at this.
Well, it's interesting you say this as an aside. OkCupid has pivoted its positioning to be more pro-single.
Oh.
So if you think about it, from a customer lifetime value standpoint, if these apps are successful, you leave the app.
Right. Like Hinge says, this is the app created with the intent to be deleted.
Yes, that's right. So you're building obsolescence into your business model where you get terminated. Mm-hmm. So OkCupid has changed this. And if you like, they have all these this whole new ad campaign that's focused, and I think is designed to be more focused on the person who's not looking to couple up forever. And so this makes sense.
The reason I like OkCupid is it's not just a swiping app. I love the compatibility questions.
I'm not familiar with this. So
okay. So
what's a quick prime? So I think most people know like Tinder, which is left, no,
400
right, 400 yes.
characters. Bumble and Tinder are the same, but I've heard that Bumble is Tinder with people with jobs.
Okay. Well, the difference is Bumble is, I think, a little more pro-women because
we have to initiate.
Yeah, the woman has to initiate. So so it just keeps them from having to get a lot of flack. You know what I mean? A lot of emails.
We get thousands of, hey, hi, hey, you're cute. Hey, I like your photo. Like, oh, it's just dreadful.
Okay. All right. So OkCupid
is more in depth. Interestingly enough, so OkCupid I got onto originally because it was one of the first websites that allowed me to be bisexual.
Oh, okay.
So in the early days of online dating, I was on...
When it was on websites.
I was on there in 2003.
Okay.
And Match was for straight people and Yahoo Personals was for gay people.
I see.
And I had a profile on both of these websites and it attracted a different kind of person. OkCupid is much more inclusive and it allows you to even say when you're in an ethical non-monogamous relationship with another person, you can tag that person's profile.
Interesting.
That's a new thing. It's very interesting to me.
I think, hey, if any listeners know anyone at OkCupid, we're looking for sponsorship.
Yes. So to that point, I think...
can I interrupt?
Yeah.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that it's not about creating an online dating profile as an ethical non-monogamist, but you might consider particular sites.
I think that's fair. Yes.
As the primary decision.
I think that's absolutely legitimate.
I
yes.
see. Yeah. No eHarmony.
Not for the listeners of this show.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so it gives you more degrees of freedom to
so much
identify.
flexibility, and also the amount of engagement that you want. You can create a profile and you can swipe, or you can answer hundreds and hundreds of questions should you want to increase your compatibility and your match percentage. To where I now have in my profile, if we are not more than a 90% match, don't be offended. I probably won't respond to you.
Okay.
So I've answered approximately 300 questions. A lot of them are yes, no questions. Do you think evolution should be taught in schools? Do you think that abortion should be legal for all purposes? Things like that.
So,
yes, no,
so
yes,
these
no.
are value-based questions.
They are value-based questions. And that's probably what's most significant to me. They ask a lot of non-monogamous questions.
Interesting.
They ask about open relationships. They ask about, should you talk to your partner about being kinky? Do you think anal sex should be on the table? Like it asks very specific graphic questions.
Yeah.
And you can bypass them if you don't want those to be public necessarily. You can also have them hidden if you want them included in your algorithm, but not visible.
I see. Oh, this sounds cutting edge.
I think it's very sophisticated.
Yeah, compared to the normal stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Which
400
feels like
characters
it
and
feels like a
swiping.
jackpot. Yeah, what was that called? A slot machine kind of thing.
Yeah, it is kind of a slot machine.
Interesting. Okay, but if you were to say,
the point of this is to say, yes, you should shop for who you are and maybe choose websites. So I am not a fan of, you get out of it what you put into it. Now, I'm in sales, so I'm all about activity-based behavior. So 100 touches equal 20 phone calls equal 3 dates equals 1 party.
oh my God, the sales funnel. You get these qualified leads.
Yes.
They each have a score.
Well, they're leads. Then you qualify them.
Yes. All right. You know what? We're the only people laughing at this right now. That's very funny.
Potentially true.
So yeah, I mean, look, it's funny you say this because I've always joked. I stole this line from someone, which is, I just say it's a war of attrition. There's a little bit of like, that's the nature of, and because the pool is so big, there's more and more attrition, than versus back in the day where the pool was very small. There were like 4 potential partners and it was fraught with concern because if one turns you down, then that makes the likelihood that another one turns you down. Right
Well,
now, these are all independent and
if I can digress for just a minute.
Sure.
I always tell my friends, and I get so annoyed whenever they say, I want to meet someone organically. Okay. So I talk about the ratios and I say, all right, where would you like to meet them?
Okay.
Okay. You want to meet them at a bar on a Saturday? You want to meet them at a dog park on Sunday? You want to meet them at the grocery store?
Or at work, right? And now we know work's a harder place to meet people nowadays.
I'm not a fan of dipping the pen personally. I just think the world is too small and professionally. It's for me.
I also think that nowadays there's a lot more.
There's just no reason.
There's a lot more concerns about when it goes sideways. It's riskier for both people,
especially to this topic of ethical non-monogamy. I do not think that it is appropriate in a work environment. It's never. I don't think it's ever going to end well because you're going to. It's one thing for you to be ethically non-monogamous in a sort of blind existence. You don't see or know the people that your partner is also seeing. When you're at work and you see them flirt with someone else,
I see,
or they go on a date with someone else. Ugh.
Also, the stakes of when things go wrong, it just is higher.
Yes,
that's fair. Okay,
I do not endorse that behavior.
I see where you're going with this, which is yes, you want to be pure about meeting people, but when you get practical about it, you're really quite limited.
Correct. So I'm going to always endorse online dating. I think it is the most efficient way to date. You get the largest pool of candidates. So let's just use going out on Saturday night. Okay. Between the 3 bars that you frequent, let's say there are 100 candidates available to you. I think that's a big stretch.
Yes.
Let's say 40. Okay. So 40 people.
I live in Boulder, so it's like
12.
4.
Okay. We can even say 25
1.
for the purposes of argument. Let's say there's 25 possible candidates of whom nothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. I'm moving to LA, so these things are.
Oh, now
changed.
your ratios are gigantic.
Yes, right.
Indefinite
Fair
almost. So let's say the 25 candidates available to you on a Friday night. How many do you talk to? 3 or 4? Maybe.
Yeah.
You give your number to one of them. You hear from none of them. Okay. So
there's your sales funnel.
And that was 7
sales.
hours on a Friday night.
Yes.
Or you can go online.
Mm-hmm.
You can quote touch or generate leads.
I see.
Okay.
Right.
You can generate, let's just say 50 leads, even in a sitting, maybe. All right. A couple of one-liners. Hey, how are you? But be more interesting, please. Okay. Make a comment about a photo or a location or something. And then of those people, maybe you get 10 responses. Of those people, maybe I give my number to 8 of them.
Okay.
I talk to 4 or 5 of them on the phone in a week. Maybe I meet one of them for coffee. Maybe I meet none of them for coffee. I never wasted a face of makeup for any of those people. And I didn't waste a Friday night. I got to hang out with my friends. I got to do all my workouts and I still qualified individuals. So when you come down to it, you're spending your time. It's a whole different tangent, right? With quality individuals because you've done the vetting process.
I see.
You qualified your leads.
Yes.
Okay. So, but I don't advertise that behavior necessarily in my dating profile, but I do talk in my dating profile about my schedule. I think that's really important about availability.
To set expectations. Okay.
Yes.
This is about the consideration idea that we talked about.
Absolutely. Because I say, listen, I leave the state at least once a month. I leave the country at least once a quarter. Both of these are typically for pleasure. I would like a partner who is available for that kind of spontaneity, or at least once a quarter to accompany me somewhere, etc. So I do like to put the expectations out there.
And you phrase that positively.
Yes. You know, I would like a partner for this, or I think I get along best with people who. I do say that. I also talk about, in the terms of ethical non-monogamy, I think having a large social circle is very evident. And so saying, I have a large family, I'm very close to them. I have many friends around the country that I like to visit or spend time with. I'm interested in interesting people who are doing things with their lives, who have a lot of hobbies. Tell me about yours.
I see.
So I think people get nervous if they are not of that expectation fulfillment, and that cuts these people down. And most often it's people who want to have the same kind of life as you, even if they don't have it today, who are mostly available to you for potentially non-monogamy.
So either people who you're already a good match or in some way aspirational. Okay. All right. So is there anything you can actually put in your profile though?
Yes. Specifically, make sure you talk about that you are open to new experiences.
Oh, code.
I like trying new things. I like meeting new people. I like having new experiences. I like learning things.
Okay.
Because I think that kind of flexibility.
Yeah, it's sort of openness to new experiences.
Yes. Back to your tier of 5 things.
Right. I like, what did you say? I like trying new things. What was it? I'm open.
I enjoy, I pursue new experiences. I love meeting new people.
I see.
I like trying new things.
I see. Okay.
I have a lot of interests. What are some of yours?
Got it.
Positioning statements.
I like how it took us 18 minutes to get to those. Those things.
Well, you didn't start with the question the same way, maybe.
That's great. No. Okay. That was a lot of fun. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Solo, the single person's guide to a remarkable life. For more about our guests and show notes, go to petermcgraw.org. Please subscribe and share with your single friends.